Hi, everybody. Good morning to you. My name is Tony Plaheski, and we are monitoring a live feed now from downtown Austin, where a landmark hearing is just getting underway. It's an exoneration hearing for 4 men who were arrested and charged in 1999 in a well-known case here in Austin. 2 of those men were found guilty, one sentenced to Texas death row, another to life in prison. The other 2 never faced trial, but a cloud of suspicion has haunted them in the decades since. I want to bring in 2 guests we have with us this morning. A well-known face here in Austin, Judy Maggio, a former anchor, longtime anchor here at KVUE, who covered the yogurt shop investigations and subsequent trials involving the 4, and Lindsay Richards, who is a local attorney here in Austin, a defense attorney currently, but a former prosecutor. So we've been watching this hearing get underway this morning, and we know that the men are in the courtroom, their attorneys are, of course, in the courtroom, and State District Judge Dayna Blazey, who is going to be presiding over this hearing, has also gone into the courtroom. And so the hearing is underway. We're going to go back to the hearing now, and then as this goes along, we're going to be reaching out to both of you for some context and analysis of what is happening. So for now, we're going to go back into the courtroom from downtown.
Staff and everyone the case has touched. Believing that teenagers were capable of these acts changed our perception of humanity. There was harm caused to the people who spent decades trying to clear the names of the 4 innocent men, their families, their community, their lawyers, and those who believed in them. They spent years screaming into the wind without being heard. It goes without saying that harm was caused to the 4 wrongfully prosecuted. Today, we are going to take the first step in righting that harm by shining a light on the truth. We took 2 of them, Mr. Scott and Mr. Springsteen, to trial. To be clear, although they remain suspects, there wasn't even enough evidence to take Forrest, Welborn, and Maurice Pierce to trial. There was not, nor is there now, forensic or eyewitness evidence connecting any of the 4 to the crime. The state asked 2 separate Travis County juries to send Mr. Scott and Mr. Springsteen to be executed for a crime they didn't commit, one in which they were just teenagers when it occurred. Ultimately, Mr. Springsteen was sentenced to death and Mr. Scott to life in prison. As Your Honor knows, their convictions were overturned because of constitutional violations that happened during their trials. The state persisted in the prosecutions. The state sought additional DNA testing while preparing for the retrials, and in 2008, all 4 men were excluded from a sexual assault kit, from DNA analyzed in a sexual assault kit. The state dismissed the cases pending further investigation instead of risking what surely would have been an acquittal without an explanation for the unknown male DNA. In 2009, the district attorney at the time stated, "I remain confident that both Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott are responsible for the deaths at the yogurt shop, and it would not be prudent to risk a trial until we also know the nature of the involvement of this unknown male." Implicit in this statement was the accompanying guilt of co-conspirators Maurice Pierce and Forrest Welborn. With those words, all 4 lived under the specter of being the yogurt shop murderers. With 4 count of capital murder arrests on their records and a simple Google search indicating they were guilty but could just not be caught, these 4 never had the chance to live normal lives. Unfortunately, as the truth has come out, it will never reach Maurice Pierce, who died in 2010. The state did all this believing we were right, but we could not have been more wrong. Through the hard work of the Austin Police Department and their law enforcement and forensic partners, we now know that the perpetrator that night was known serial killer Robert Eugene Brashers. The APD cold case unit used grit, determination, best practices, and an open mind to find the truth. They never gave up in the last 34 years. For that, they should be commended. We can't prosecute Robert Brashers because he is dead. But make no mistake, today we will be showing you that Robert Brashers is guilty, beyond a reasonable doubt, of committing the yogurt shop murders. We will do that by showing you DNA, ballistics, and modus operandi evidence. In doing so, we will also show you that the science proves the confessions used in the prosecutions of the 4 were false. Simply said, both the science and the confessions can't be true. Across the country, in close to a quarter of DNA exonerations, the convictions were based in whole or in part on a false confession, often due to interrogation techniques that relied on methods that could elicit false statements. Here in Austin, we were not immune. There were over 50 false confessions to the yogurt shop murders alone, and sadly, this was not the only case in which false confessions resulted in wrongful prosecutions and convictions. We now know that methods of questioning and the age and vulnerability of the suspects can result in false confessions, and then prosecuting the case when there's a lack of evidentiary corroboration to the confessions can result in a wrongful conviction. But we can't go back in time and change what happened to the four. What we can do is make sure the truth is known, and the truth is that Forrest Welborn, Maurice Pierce, Michael Scott, and Robert Springsteen are innocent. They did not commit the murders, nor were they involved in any way. The truth is that Robert Eugene Brashers is guilty, and he alone committed the yogurt shop murders. For these reasons, at the close of this hearing, we'll be asking Your Honor to amend our previously filed motions to dismiss pending further investigation, to dismiss all cases based on actual innocence. Thank you.
Do representatives of the exonerees wish to give a statement?
May it please the court. Thank you, Judge Blazey, for giving
So just to bring you up to speed and kind of help orient you a little bit, we've just been listening to Trudy Strasburger, who is the first assistant district attorney here in Travis County, and we're soon to hear from Michael Ware, who is the director of the Texas Innocence Project. Just very quickly, I want to ask you, Lindsay, about your thoughts on Trudy's opening statement.
I mean, I think she did what she was supposed to do, which is fully admitting that the prosecutors in this case did in fact get it wrong, and had it wrong for quite some time, and that we know for certain, beyond a reasonable doubt, it is Brashers, and that these were, coerced false confessions.
We're going to go back into the courtroom now and listen to Michael Ware from the Texas Innocence Project.
Since that press conference and announcement on September the 29th, Detective Jackson has continued his investigation, and the evidence of Brasher's guilt and the innocence of Springsteen, Scott, Welborn, and Pierce remains overwhelming. You will hear from Detective Jackson, who was assigned this case as a cold case in 2022, and how he worked on this case, he and others with the Austin Police Department worked on this case relentlessly, and how in July of 2025, he submitted a spent .380 shell casing collected from the original crime scene by the Texas Department of Public Safety in 1991, and submitted it through the ATF by a task force officer to the National NIBIN database. This was in July of 2025. The same day he submitted it, he got a hit. There was an unsolved murder case in Lexington, Kentucky, where the murderer had used the same gun. This set off what I would characterize as an extraordinary chain of events involving Ayers, matching to serial murderer Robert Brashers, or Brashers. So there's a murder weapon match to Brashers, there's a DNA match to Brashers, and there's an MO match to Brashers. Finally, with the court's permission, you will hear from the people that have been affected most profoundly by the false accusations and wrongful convictions. Some of the then boys, now men, and some of the family members will address the court and what the last 34 years has been like for them, and what this moment in time, this exoneration, how much it means to them.
And Ms. Fairley, would you like to?
May it please the court. The yogurt shop murders is unquestionably the most notorious case in the state of Texas. It has been described as the case that changed Austin. Few crimes in Texas history can provoke outrage like it has. Outrage because of the nature and brutality of the cold-blooded murder of 4 innocent teenage girls. Outrage such as to the extent that many involved would do anything to solve it, including pinning the murders on 4 young boys. These were 4 normal teenage boys at the time of these murders. For the past 27 years, we on the defense have always referred to them as the boys, because we've always maintained that boys could not have done this crime, because their entire youth and futures were taken away from them. Within weeks of the murders, Robert Springsteen and others were questioned as suspects and immediately cleared of any involvement. It wasn't until 8 years later that Robert Springsteen was prosecuted. Not because of any evidence, as there was and never has been any evidence that links any of them to this crime, but because of biased and corrupted investigation. An investigation that eventually resulted in a coerced false confession. Coerced confessions where they were manipulated, lied to, and fed details. Obtained after relentless, lengthy interrogation sessions that included telling Robert that the reason he didn't remember details of the crime is because the crime was so horrible that he had psychologically blocked it from his mind. Those interrogating him then helped him recover his memory of the crime by literally feeding him the details that he eventually remembered. It was this confession of which was the sole reason for his conviction. Robert Springsteen was sentenced to death. He spent 10 years in prison and on death row, up to 23 hours a day in a cell with no human contact. Let us not forget that he could be dead right now, executed at the hands of the state of Texas. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals reversed Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott's convictions because their constitutional Sixth Amendment rights were violated. The case was then remanded for new trials. As we began preparing for trial, DNA testing of biological materials left by the killer at the scene of the murder led to a shocking result. The DNA revealed that a full YSTR profile that matched neither Robert Springsteen nor his co-defendants, nor any of the other nearly 300 men tested either as suspects or for contamination. The district attorney eventually dismissed the case expressly because of the surprising results of this DNA testing. Testing that precludes Robert Springsteen's participation in the crime under any rational theory of the murders ever contemplated by law enforcement in the quarter of century they've had to think about this case. And although the state dismissed the charges, the cases remained open, pending further investigation, and hanging over all of their heads. For 27 years, Robert Springsteen and the boys have fought to clear their name, and the state has fought us on this all the way. Robert has maintained his innocence from the beginning, even when offered a deal if he would testify against the others, and he refused. When he was sentenced to death, he lost all hope. He lost hope that the real killer would ever be found, and he lost hope in the criminal justice system. The cause of this case and why we're here isn't because of just one police officer or one ADA. It is because of systemic failures perpetrated over the years by many. Robert Springsteen and the others are victims of a miscarriage of justice, where the evidence, the science, and the truth all point to their innocence. These convictions should also provoke outrage. Make no mistake, this can and will happen again unless we pay attention here. Identify the investigative failures and force our system to focus not on obtaining convictions, but on the pursuit of truth. This case needs to change Austin. It needs to change Texas. It needs to change how cases are handled. It is truly a miracle that we are here. A miracle that has come too late for Maurice Pierce and has been denied for too long for Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, and Forrest Welborn. We are grateful for this meaningful opportunity to establish what is demonstrably true, that Robert Springsteen and the other boys indeed are actually innocent, and ask that they be exonerated and restore their good names. Thank you.
Mr. Diaz, would you like to give an opening statement?
So just 20 minutes or so into this hearing, I mean, clearly we are listening to very powerful opening statements from attorneys for these four men. Judy, what is your reaction
Counsel?
just in this very early
Members of Austin,
moments in the
Texas.
proceeding?
First of all, this was a travesty of justice. And I loved what Amber Farrelly said, and that she said the few crimes have provoked such outrage in all of the state, really in all of the country, but being the victims that they were of this miscarriage of justice, those convictions should have also prompted outrage. I mean, this was mishandled from the very beginning. And she said that they would do anything to solve it, including
Here.
arresting four young boys who really had nothing to do with the crime.
Just very powerful statements early on in this proceeding, which we know going in was going to be deeply emotional. Right now, we have Tony Diaz, who is addressing the court. He represents Michael Scott, who was sentenced to life in prison. Let's go into the courtroom.
On the law school. And I had a vague recollection of those words, but I couldn't quote them, so I wrote them down. I'm 68. And so the words are profound but simple. On the UT Tower, it says that they may truly and impartially administer justice. And on the tower it says, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So, Your Honor, if it please the court, we're here today for one reason, and that is to correct the record and formally recognize what the evidence now conclusively proves in the yogurt shop murders. Michael James Scott, whom I refer to as Mike Scott, and his family refers to as the gentle giant, is actually innocent. I have been uttering those words since I met Mike Scott on October 9th, 1999. He was 25. He had his teeth. He had his hair. And he said, standing tall and walking proud. And he's right there today. He's 52. Mr. Scott spent Write this number down. Think about it. 4,530 days. That's more than 12 and a half years. Think about it. It's hard to follow some of the finest lawyers in the state of Texas, some of the finest trial lawyers. It's very hard. This room is full of courageous people standing up for the two quotes that I read to you. Mike Scott was incarcerated in administrative segregation. My wife asked me, "What is that?" I told her, "My love, that is what most folks refer to as in the hole, solitary confinement." And I remember seeing Mike in the shackles in a cage as if he was something out of Silence of the Lambs. Don't watch that show. It's horrible, it's inhumane, it's ugly. But Mike stood tall, and he walked proudly, even as he had to shuffle with the chains. Mike was convicted in 2002. He was represented by some of the finest criminal trial lawyers in the state, if not the country. My colleague, Carlos Garcia. I'm going to say that again because the phone rang. My colleague, Carlos Garcia, from whom I owe a debt of gratitude. And my esteemed colleague, and one of the 6 best friends I have next to Mike Scott, Mr. Dexter Earl Guilford. He was convicted in 2002, only to have that conviction reversed by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals in 2007. But what we present here today, it goes much more beyond some procedural reversal. Post-conviction DNA testing excluded Michael Scott way back in 2008. There were 19 alleles that didn't come back to Mike Scott and the boys. The exclusion wasn't speculative. It wasn't a guess, because DNA, as we're learning more and more, is infallible. It is definitive. And on top of that, work by fine, dedicated professionals. Some of them are sitting right next to me on my left. I don't have to point at them, but they're right there. They did critical biological testing, and they did subsequent ballistic analysis, and comprehensive investigative findings have now confirmed one thing. By himself, Robert Eugene Brashers, or as fancy people say, Brashers, he committed the crimes. He killed these 4 girls. And Lord knows, he has to be paid for it. To a reasonable scientific certainty, those findings have been made by true professionals qualified. The Austin Police Department has publicly announced that very conclusion. The state has bravely filed, an amended motion acknowledging no credible evidence exists that inculpates Mr. Scott. That's brave, and they're to be commended for that. This is not the case of insufficient evidence. It's not a case of reasonable doubt. This is a case of actual innocence. We can say those words, actual innocence. The investigation is complete. The science is conclusive. The record is clear. No reasonable juror, in light of the DNA and ballistic and investigative evidence, could ever convict Mike Scott. We respectfully ask the court to supersede the 2009 dismissal that was entered pending further investigation, and to dismiss all the causes with prejudice, and to enter formal findings declaring that the evidence now establishes beyond question that Michael James Scott is actually innocent. I have made that clarion call, and there has been a hue and a cry. Some of you protesting, release Mike. The posters, nobody listened. Today, by the grace of God and the wisdom of our judge, Mike Scott will be declared innocent and exonerated. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Back here live, we've been listening to Tony Diaz, who has represented Michael Scott since soon after he was arrested in October 1999, making an impassioned plea to the judge to declare him actually innocent. Again, inside the courtroom, this very emotional moment. There you see Austin Police cold case investigator Dan Jackson. He is the one who essentially solved this case last year, and he is about to take the stand for a considerable amount of time. He's the key witness in this proceeding, and he is going to go over with the court and with the public all of the evidence that he say implicates serial killer Robert Brashers and rules out, in his words, these four original suspects as the killers. And we're about to listen to him now, Detective Dan Jackson.
I'm sorry, can you turn on the mic, please?
Detective Jackson, can you please state your name and badge number for the record?
Yes, it's Detective Daniel William Jackson. My badge number is 7853.
And where are you currently employed?
I'm currently a detective with the Austin Police Department's Cold Case Homicide and Missing Persons Unit.
Okay. Let's go back and talk about your history for a little bit. You have a graduate degree, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that degree in?
It's a Master of Arts in Anthropology.
Okay. And did you have a subspecialty?
Yes, in Forensic Anthropology.
And what exactly is forensic anthropology?
It's the application of physical anthropology, the study of the human skeleton, and it applies to the field of forensic science.
And what year did you get that degree?
In 2005.
And what was your first job after you finished school?
In October of 2005, I was employed by the Travis County Medical Examiner's Office and stayed there for approximately 9 years.
And what were your responsibilities there?
My primary job was an investigator, a crime scene or death investigator, as they're often called. However, given my background in anthropology, they didn't have an anthropologist on staff. They had me do a dual role where anytime we actually had a skeletal remains case, I would sort of break off from my normal duties and handle those cases.
And as part of the skeletal remains project, you worked with the DNA lab at the University of North Texas, is that correct?
Yes, that job also sort of morphed into, I began, I guess you could say, managing all the unidentified remains cases that had amassed over the years there at the ME's office. And part of that, to get those people identified, is working with the University of North Texas to do DNA testing on different samples for CODIS or familial testing on missing persons.
And so is it fair to say that you have much more than a rudimentary understanding of DNA?
I'd say so, just because it became part of my job, and it has been for the last 20 years.
And approximately how many deaths did you investigate while you were at the ME's office?
I authored over 4,000 reports.
And what year did you leave the ME's office?
I left in July of 2014.
And from there, you went to the Austin Police Department.
Yes, in August of 2014.
And eventually, you became a homicide detective.
Yes, I promoted detective in the spring of 2020 and was assigned to the homicide unit.
And you moved to cold case mid-spring 2022?
Yes, I think it was late May of 22.
And what case did your sergeant assign you?
On the first day, he sat me down and asked if I would take over this case, the murders of Eliza Thomas, Amy Ayers, Jennifer and Sarah Harbison, that everyone refers to as the yogurt shop murders.
Have you reached a conclusion as to who you think committed the murders?
Yes, I have.
And who is that?
Robert Eugene Brashers, or Brashers, I say it both ways.
And are there members of the team that you worked with here in court today?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to recognize Lieutenant Becky Briegel of the Austin Police Department Cold Case Unit, Sergeant Melanie Rodriguez of the Austin Police Department Cold Case Unit. I'd also like to recognize Mindy Montford, formerly of the Texas Attorney General Cold Case Unit lead. And there are other members of the team who couldn't be here today as well.
Many more, yes. This was a huge effort.
Yes. Let's go back to the beginning of the assignment. You're aware that 4 people were arrested for the yogurt shop murders in 1999, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Forrest Welborn was 15 years old at the time of the murders, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And a grand jury did not return an indictment for him.
Correct.
Maurice Pierce was 16 years old at the time of the murder, and his cases were dismissed prior to his trial, is that correct?
Correct.
Robert Springsteen was convicted and sentenced to death.
Yes, ma'am.
And Michael Scott was also convicted in 2002 and sentenced to life without parole.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're aware that the 2 convictions were overturned, sent back to Travis County, and you're aware that while preparing for a new trial, more DNA testing was done and all 4 were excluded from the DNA samples tested, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that had been the DNA from a vaginal swab?
Yes.
Before we go into the details as to how you concluded that Robert Brashers was the perpetrator, you've previously stated you did not review the confessions that were used in the prosecutions prior to starting as part of your investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Excuse me. And why was that?
For several reasons. Mainly, I didn't want to put myself into a position where I had confirmation bias. I thought, and that goes both ways. I didn't want to listen to them and think, wow, these guys are guilty as sin, and I'm going to find a way to arrest them, and discount or not put as much weight, even if it's subconsciously, on evidence that may be pointed somewhere else. And conversely, if I would listen to the confessions and thought, I would think these guys, got coerced and got railroaded, I even subconsciously might discount evidence that pointed towards them. So I just left it, I don't know who did this. And I also thought that if there was new evidence that pointed to the 4 suspects and they were brought to trial again, and I was asked, or it was brought up during, say, cross-examination, the police department's been after these guys for 25 years, is there some sort of bias here? I could swear under oath, never listen to a word they said. This is where my investigation brought me.
Great. And scientists sometimes call this a bias mitigating strategy, is that correct?
Yes.
And did your investigation uncover any forensic or physical evidence connecting any of the 4 to the murders?
No.
Did your investigation uncover any evidence connecting the 4 to Robert Brashers in any way?
No.
And your conclusion today is that the 4 were not involved in the murders, correct?
That is correct.
And you concluded that Brashers was the perpetrator based primarily on DNA, ballistics, and modus operandi evidence?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'd ask for permission for Detective Jackson to have a narrative presentation this time.
Yes, you may. I'm sorry, who said no objection? No objection, thank you. Detective, you may proceed in a narrative fashion.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
And please slow down.
Okay.
And hold the microphone up just a little bit, the tip of it. There,
Is that better?
that's better,
Okay.
thank you.
So we're going to walk you through a PowerPoint presentation here. It's very similar but slimmed down from the press conference we held in September. And I believe the state will stop me at different points to get clarification on things. So we all know why we're here today. This is just the picture of the outside of the yogurt shop, how it looked the morning after. Looks very similar today, except it's a nail salon. But as you can see here, there was already a memorial being started for these girls. And let's not forget today, while we're here as well, 4 lives were lost tragically that night. And Eliza Thomas, Amy Ayers, Jennifer Harbison, and Sarah Harbison were brutally killed, and their families have been frozen in time for 34 years. Here's just a sort of an overall bird's eye view diagram of what the yogurt shop looked like. It's your standard sort of retail space in a strip mall. The girls' bodies were found in the back, and that's where the fire started. The front door had been locked from the inside, and it appeared the perpetrator had exited the rear door. So what they knew back then was that the perpetrator came in at or near closing time, and the girls were later found by the fire department nude, tied up with their own clothing, and with bindings and ligatures. There was evidence of sexual assault. All 4 girls had been executed. They were shot in the head with a .22 caliber pistol. Amy Ayers was shot a second time with a .380 semi-automatic handgun, and then the building was set on fire. So you have to remember this is 1991. DNA technology was just coming around, but they did have the foresight to go ahead and collect swabs from the girls, both at the scene and then later at the autopsy the next day. One of the only other pieces of evidence that was recovered was a spent or fired cartridge casing from a .380 handgun, and it was recovered from the floor drain during the processing of the crime scene. But with the fire and the water, basically destroyed the chance of getting any other type of evidence. In 1999, the 4 men that we're here today about were arrested and on 4 counts of capital murder. It's Mr. Maurice, Pierce, Forrest, Welborn, Robert Springsteen, and Michael Scott. During interrogation, we know that Mr. Springsteen and Mr. Scott both confessed, implicated the others as well. Forrest, Welborn, and Maurice Pierce did not. They were all arrested anyway. Mr. Welborn was no bail by the grand jury, and Mr. Pierce's charges were eventually dropped. The 2 men who confessed were put on trial separately. Both were found guilty, primarily based on their confessions, with no physical evidence. And we know that Mr. Scott received life without parole. Mr. Springsteen was sentenced to death. And there was still no physical evidence to link these men to the crime. We know that in 2006 and 2007, respectively, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals granted them a new trial. So in preparation for this trial, the district attorney's office and the police department decided to try to get physical evidence that would shore up this case. And by this time, there had been a new technology that had sort of arrived called YSTR DNA testing. YSTR, do we want to go into?
Yeah, can you just describe it?
Sure. So YSTR testing, one second, is a form of DNA testing that only looks at genetic material found in certain locations on the Y chromosome. So that's the male chromosome. And it only looks for specific, particular locations, so that each case, say you're looking at 16 genetic points, the same 16 for each test you do. And at this time, 16 was a complete profile. We have more now, but at that time, one of the swabs that was taken from a sexual assault kit found a YSTR profile, and it excluded all 4 of the young men. So until the identity of that YSTR was known, the district attorney's office dropped the charges pending further investigation, and they began a massive investigation to find out who this donor of the profile was. I don't know how many people we've tested since then. I mean, it's 400 or 500. I mean, I was still testing, doing direct testing many times, even when I got the case. But, you know, we're here, so they wanted to eliminate any contamination. Friends, family, firefighters, police, medical examiner personnel, associates, friends, everything. And the identity remained unknown.
And do you have any concerns that there was contamination?
No. Because we found the same, let's say we, the collective judicial, or the DNA labs in the police department have found consistently the same profile that was collected by different people and sent to different labs in different decades, and it's all the same.